Hello there, and welcome to the Get French Football News Preview Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Adam White and Samuel Rooke, who should be joining us a little later. Love isn't in the air yet, and neither is the smell of pancakes, but February is the ideal chance for someone to make a move. So, who's going up and who's going down? That might need a little bit of rephrasing, but before we chat Ligue 1 football, here's the latest headlines. Marseille recorded their best win in 70 years as they put 9 past Bourges-en-Bresse in the Coupe de France round of 16 on Tuesday night. Lucas Ocampos and Kostas Mitroglou both netted hat-tricks in the big victory. Paris Saint-Germain are also into the quarterfinals after they saw off Sochaux 4-1 away from home, with Angel Di Maria grabbing 3 of the goals and Dani Alves having a spell in goal. Troyes crashed out to Ligue 2 side Lens, who won 1-0, while Caen needed penalties in a 2-2 thriller against Metz that saw both sides score in extra time. Lyon continued their march in the competition with a 2-1 win at Montpellier, with Nabil Fekir's spot kick making the difference, while Strasbourg have made it to the next round after winning 3-0 against Grenoble earlier this evening. Elsewhere, National side, Les Herbiers beat Ligue 2 side in an upset Auxerre 3-0. They are the lowest ranked side still in the competition. And Chambly knocked out the previously lowest ranked side, Grandvier, 1-0. In the quarterfinals, which were drawn earlier today, Strasbourg will be at home to Chambly. Paris Saint-Germain in the big match will be hosting Marseille. Les Herbiers will be facing Lens in a battle between two sides outside of Ligue 1 for a place in the semi-finals, which is not a bad one for either of those. And Caen will be hosting Lyon. And that's all for now. But for the latest in the world of French football, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start with those midweek games in the Coupe de France, and I wanted to start with Paris Saint-Germain, Adam, who recorded a relatively comfortable win in the end, with a bit of an interesting one for 2 players. Angel Di Maria staking his claim for a starting place more often, especially with the Champions League games coming up with a hat-trick, and Dani Alves having a little spelling goal after a red card for Kevin Trapp. It was an interesting and slightly strange game, wasn't it?
Yeah, you make those bring up those 2 players there, and it was definitely an interesting night for them both. I think first of all, Di Maria. There was a whole thing last season about him wanting to play on the right, and there's a bit of a sort of not necessarily falling out, but there was a sort of a he clearly wasn't happy playing being shoved out on the left, with Lucas Moura there, who was also better on the right, and there was he really felt like that's where he saw himself, but he played on the left yesterday, so it's really interesting to see that when he wants to and when he's under pressure for his place in the team, he's started the last 10 games, but obviously when everyone's fit and available or not, being given days off like Neymar, then he wouldn't be in the first 11. So when he needs to, he can play on that left-hand side. He was absolutely brilliant against Sochaux and has been since the turn of the year. He's been really, really good. Not just scoring those goals, but he was creative and exciting and played with intensity. So that was really good to see. And L'Équipe this morning were, making a comparison to him and Mbappe with that Real Madrid game next week. He could even supplant Mbappe in the starting 11. I personally don't think he will, but the fact that he's been putting pressure on him is a testament to how well he's been playing. And Alves was fantastic. Kevin Trapp got sent off, if anyone hasn't seen it, came out and supposedly brought down a player who was cleared for a goal, although I'm not entirely sure whether that was the case. I kind of felt Thomas Meunier was going to get to the ball before that Sochaux attacker. Referee sent it off, and PSG used all their subs, and Sochaux ended up with a free kick on the edge of the area, and Dani Alves went in goal, which possibly when you're playing sort of percentages in terms of players going in goal, on-field players going in goal, outfield players going in goal, you go for the tallest guy, or sometimes that you've seen like a captain going goal, perhaps. I remember Phil Jagielka going goal for Crystal Palace for Sheffield United, sorry. Emerson in goal for Brazil in training where he famously injured himself, that sort of thing. But Alves, being the character he is, decided to go in goal, and it was great to see, but the most disappointing thing about that was that the free kick didn't test him. They hit the wall from the free kick. You've got a short dude in goal. You would have felt like just hit it, get it on target, make a save. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But it was a fun game, exciting, open. The first half was really open. Sochaux equalised after PSG took the lead really early on and really held their own. And they obviously beat Amiens 6-0 in this tournament as well. So they're clearly a team that can hold their own against Ligue sides, although not having the best season in Ligue 2. But an exciting game for PSG fans and for the tournament as a whole, I think.
Yeah, there was a brief moment at 1-1 where we thought, oh, hello there. There might be something happening in a midweek game, but it was quickly extinguished. And trust Dani Alves to take opportunity at a moment where he's thinking, well, the game's won. I might as well have a bit of a go in goal, actually. I've done pretty much everything else in my career. I might as well have a brief stint between the nets. That shirt was 3 sizes too big as well for him as well. Onto that, well, not quite record-breaking, but one of their best wins in a long while, really, Sam, for Marseille, who put 9 past the Ligue 2 side Bourg-en-Bresse. It involved hat-tricks for Lucas Campos and Kostas Mitroglou, which, in honesty, they've had good performances from Saint-Germain recently, but getting the Greek to have a little bit more confidence, even if it is in such a big win and relatively irrelevant goals in the end, getting him back and confident is an important step as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that's what they were hoping for. They're perhaps hoping he might have got those goals a little sooner and in a bit more of a significant situation. But if it takes him 6 months to adjust, and this is the first signs of him really sort of finding himself in this Marseille team, that can't be anything but a good thing. He really brings something different to Marseille. And if he can reach the level he's been at most of his career, which is prolific and effective, then that's going to be huge for Marseille in this sort of race for Champions League football. I mean, it's a hat-trick. Any hat-trick's a good hat-trick. You know, you really can't complain about that. And surely it's going to give him some confidence. Saint-Germain might be out this weekend as well, so maybe Mitroglou gets a start. Maybe he can back up that hat-trick with some goals that matter a little more. But, you know, it's good news for Marseille. I mean, it has to be when you win 9-0.
Yeah, absolutely. And in all honesty, Sam, their next game now in that cup game is against Paris Saint-Germain. That's their final, isn't it? If they win that, that's a great chance of them getting silverware.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you just can't wait for that game. You know, to get a bonus classic is a real treat for all of us, I think. And yeah, if they win that game, and they might get lucky the way it falls, PSG might have their eyes elsewhere. You know, perhaps on Champions League football. If they win that game, it'll be huge for them in their season. But yeah, a chance to really lay their hands on the football and on some trophies and end PSG's dominance of French domestic cups.
Yeah, it's a great chance for a number of teams now. I mean, obviously, as soon as you get to sort of the quarterfinal stages, it's a good chance for anyone to start thinking about winning tournaments, no matter how big or how small you are, Adam. I mean, looking at the sides that are left, obviously Lyon will fancy this chances. You watched Caen the other night against Metz in an entertaining one as well. Do they maybe have an outside chance of this one? Because if you look at the rest of the tour, I mean, Strasbourg and Chambly, you would probably expect the Ligue side to go through. Then there's 2 lower division sides in the other semi-final. It's a great chance for a team like Caen maybe to make a final. Yeah,
it really is. It'd be interesting because I think that's the great thing about the Coupe de France. I think it's being English. Obviously, the FA Cup is you know, it's famously the oldest cup competition in the world, and it's you know, the magic of the cup and all that. Great, but I think the Coupe de France in European terms, obviously not in France, but it's a very underrated tournament. It's a really, really interesting tournament. And stuff like this happens all the time. You look at the quarterfinalists, and you said, you know, there's Herbier in there, have been in there in the later rounds. You know, Lens, Ligue 2 side, you know, getting into the quarterfinals. Chambly as well, you know, holding their own. Granville beating Bordeaux and getting to the round of 16. There's some really interesting teams that fight their way up from those lower divisions and can get really quite far, and they cause upsets against high division teams. And of course, there's the inclusion of the overseas territories, French teams. So last season we had Lille playing a team from Union Island, which was really interesting. Excelsior, they're only 2-1 up with 5 minutes to go in that game, ended up winning it 4-1 in the end. But still, it shows like the competition in the lower leagues in France and even abroad. So it's a really exciting competition. And even if you look at the winners, you look down the winners list, and there are some, you know, Guingamp won a cup relatively recently. So these things can happen in France. So for a team like Caen, they'll definitely be fancying their chances, getting this far at least. And you know, couple of games, and they're at the Stade de France. And if PSG and Marseille knock each other out, there's a real chance for them there. So I think the Coupe de France is a really underrated competition. It really highlights to its strengths and the strengths of French football in the lower divisions. So definitely, I think Patrice Garand will be eyeing that, especially they're in mid-table, not really going to do much this season, perhaps, be eyeing the final.
And that's the interesting thing about this draw now. I mean, especially because PSG and Marseille are having to face each other. That's one big gun that someone doesn't have to face as well. And, if maybe someone gets lucky in that Les Herbiers and Lens match and maybe takes on a Caen or a Strasbourg in the semi-finals, you never really know. It might be a really interesting one as we go ahead in that one. On to matters in Liga this weekend. And there's a number of interesting games. And we start on Friday night's game between Saint-Etienne and Marseille. And Sam, I wanted to talk about the hosts first, really. Saint-Etienne have been a little bit better in the last couple of weeks. They've still sort of flittering between being okay and being dire, but at least they've obviously brought a couple of players in over the winter break. They got a good solid win away to Amiens last weekend as well, which showed a little bit of life, or signs of life at least anyway, with Ntep as well scoring his first goal for them. Is there shoots of optimism for them now? I know it's a difficult game against Marseille, but there's something starting to grow there a little bit more than we've seen for the majority of this season.
Yeah, I mean, the key for them is avoiding relegation, and the shoots of that are certainly there. I mean, they're up to 12th now. They're sort of 5 points away from the drop zone, which is a huge improvement on where they were. The changes they've made over the winter have obviously helped. They do look a lot better than they did. They looked just utterly forgettable for months, and they don't anymore. They look okay, as you said. They don't look great. They don't look like they're going to blow anyone away and race their way up the table, but they very much look like a team that will finish comfortably safe. This is not the game that they need to target to win to stay safe. Anything they get out of this game will be a bonus. There are bigger games for them, more winnable games on the horizon. They have the derby against Lyon in a couple of weeks, but they've got a lot of other winnable games coming up, and they really just want to give a good account of themselves here and show more of the promise of what these sort of new recruits and those who are still there can do together.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting period, really, for Les Verts, Adam. They've got this tough game at home against Marseille, then a winnable game against Angers in a few weeks' time, and then the return of that mauling when they had to the Parc OL at the end of the month as well. What do you think ahead of this game, at least, anyway? Is this one where you would expect a classic sort of Saint-Etienne performance of defenders high, as strong as you can, and sort of play on the counter-attack and hope that Marseille's slightly weak, leaky defence can give them a little bit of a benefit and try and nick a win here? Adam?
Hello, sorry, I had the mute button on. Sorry. Yes, it's my bad. It's really interesting to use the phrase "classic Saint-Etienne performance" because I really feel like they're sort of developed. Well, not at least in the last decade, they've really developed the identity of being a defensive team and organised across 3 managers now: Gasset, Oscar Garcia, and Gautier. Obviously, the majority being Gautier, but it would be a classic Saint-Etienne performance, and I really see that coming. I mean, these games are actually pretty good between Marseille and Saint-Etienne. At Saint-Etienne, Marseille in the last few years, anyway. Marseille often win quite easy at home, but they've been tight, and I think that'll suit Saint-Etienne. They'll happily sit back and happily try and hit Marseille in the counter attack because the way the season's gone, they're not really expected to take anything in this game at all. Marseille are in really, really good form. They're finally playing like the team that they should. They look like the team they should be with this talent and the money they spent. So I think Saint-Etienne, they'll sit in, as Gasset was Jean-Louis Gasset was saying before this game, that they were much more sort of organised and much more sort of rigorous in the game against Amiens, and they were very effective in that game. And that sums this club up. They're an effective team, at least at their best. At the worst, they can be pretty dire, but they'll happily take anything from this game. A point would be wonderful for them, given how well the season's gone. And they won't have Remy Cabella because he can't play against his parent club. There's a little bit. They're definitely underdogs, but I can at home and their support behind them, fantastic support that they have at Saint-Etienne. I can definitely see them taking something from this game and causing Marseille a few issues.
This is going to be an interesting one. But Sam, in recent weeks, at least anyway, for Marseille, it's been much more improved. They've shown their mettle against some of the bigger sides as well, and they were really good on Friday. Even though obviously they conceded 3 at the end, it maybe soured things a little bit, really. But they're scoring goals and they're getting more from the other players. I mean, they relied a lot on Tovan and Gustavo early on in the season, but Ocampos is scoring goals. Mitroglou starting to get involved. Germain started improving as well. They're on the rise, aren't they?
Yeah, very much so. And I think another one who you didn't mention there, probably deserves a mention, is Payet. We're starting to see, again, something closer to the player that we saw for 6 months last season, and we really haven't seen at all this year. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists in his last 6 games. I mean, that's the level you want from him, sort of delivering every week. He's taking some of the pressure off Tovan. Also, because Tovan takes so much pressure upon himself, Payet is freer to play. But it's great to see Germain finally sort of firing as well with a bit of regularity. You know, we mentioned Mitroglou in the cup game. This is a Marseille team that's starting to get really exciting. You know, with there's more coming out of Rami. Rami looks a really good player. We all sort of scoffed at his signing, but he's fit in really well and he's looking very good. And all across this Marseille team, you see strength, you see depth, you see options. You know, it's going to be interesting when the European football comes back around, sort of end of this month. They have Europa League games to play, where it'll really test that depth, and we'll sort of see maybe just how deep this squad is. They have a European game 3 days before they play PSG in Ligue 1. That'll be an interesting one. But certainly, yeah, this is a really exciting time for Marseille. For a long time, they've been sort of outside the power players in Ligue 1, looking up. But now suddenly, arguably the form team of the top part of the league, without the exception of PSG. And right now, you probably back them to be the ones to finish second.
Feels like that, doesn't it, Adam? At the moment, they're obviously the front runners, but at the moment in that sort of dogfight between second, third, and fourth, they need to keep winning. It's important again that they do that on Friday night against a team that are probably going to sit back and try and absorb pressure from them, which obviously they didn't really face on last Friday night very much. But it might be a little bit more difficult one to break down this one. Yeah,
definitely. I think that you're absolutely right about them. Perhaps there's a lot to be said about that. I think the dogfight for second and third and fourth. At the moment, they're in the best form, but there's such a long way to go. I really think that Lyon and Monaco have their own strengths and are fully capable of hitting form just as good as Marseille, and Marseille are fully capable of dropping off. So those 3 teams are so close, unbelievably tight, really, in terms of ability, in terms of form, in terms of players, in terms of the way they've been playing across the season. It's evened out really quite a lot. So although Marseille look like favourites at the moment, they are playing the best. There's still a number of twists and turns to go, and that defeat of Marseille's at Lyon really proved that that Lyon in particular are capable of beating the bigger sides, and when they're on their game, beating pretty much anyone in this league. PSG may be aside, or then they beat PSG as well, so it could be anyone in this league. So there's going to be a lot of things to be said between now and the end of the season, but. Drop points here for Marseille would be a disappointment, given how poor Saint-Etienne have been, and they'll be expecting to win this game, which could play in Saint-Etienne's hands a little bit. There might be a little bit of pressure on Marseille. They're going to frustrate them, so it's going to be an interesting match.
Let's get some predictions then on this one. Sam, what are you going for?
I think Marseille are going to win it. I think they're going to win it with a little bit of ease. Saint-Etienne have got injuries. They've got players who are unavailable. I think Marseille are going to win 2-0.
Adam?
I'm going to say 1-1.
I think it might just be a sneaky one for Marseille. Maybe a little bit of a Tovan-inspired bit of genius, maybe again, that nicks a win against a Saint-Etienne side that are definitely going to play 11 men behind the ball for as long as they possibly can, really. On to the Saturday's games, and there's an interesting one that I thought we've not talked about a few sides for a little while, and that's Dijon and Nice. It's an interesting one for both sides, and I want to start with the away side first, Adam. Nice have been on a quietly decent run recently, sort of since the turn of the year. They picked up a couple of decent wins, a draw at Monaco as well, then 2 defeats against Metz and Toulouse that have sort of derailed them from possibly fighting for fifth and pushed them back into sort of mid-table. They're not any worries of being relegated, but in all honesty, they've got Nantes in a week's time as well. They'll want to get back on the horse and try and chase them for a guaranteed Europa League spot, won't they?
Yeah, I definitely think given the turnover of players over the summer and the players that left and the players that came in, yes, it took a while to get going, but it really felt before Christmas and even over the Christmas period, when they came back in the new year, that Nice were back and Lucien Favre had found a way to sort of cajole his team into the performances that he expects. They looked far more organised. They looked far more, it played with much more intensity. Balotelli was scoring goals. But you're right, in the last few weeks, they've kind of dropped off a little bit. And although that's disappointing and they've let Nantes get away from them a little bit, I still expect Nice to finish fifth overall. I think on paper they've got the next best team. I think it will be close between them and Nantes, but I think that what Lucien Favre did last season in the way that he sort of very cleverly, sort of very tactically nuanced use of his team, and he was able to sort of eke out wins towards the end of the season and keeping that just about in that title race. I really think that'll come back to help him. And although Ranieri's very good at it too, I think that there's slightly more quality for Nice. So I imagine that they'll eventually finish fifth. But in those defeats, especially I actually watched the Toulouse game today, and I felt they were by far the better team. Toulouse got really quite lucky, which they normally don't get anywhere away from home, and it is pretty bad losing home to Toulouse. They're terrible away from home. But that fantastic Gradel goal won the game, and apart from that, Nice got really all over them, and they should have won that game. And obviously, the Mets game was very unfortunate too, with the sending off. So on paper, those defeats look bad, and they are bad. But there's a lot of caveats to those two Nice performances, and I think that Favre's got his team back to where he wants to be, or at least roughly. So they're definitely going to be a danger on the home straight, and I'd expect them to finish fifth.
And that's really the interesting point of this game, really, Sam, is that they are currently sort of sat in seventh. They're only 3 points off Nantes, and they play them in next week. They play Bordeaux, who are just 2 points behind the game after that. But this is an ideal game, really, to get some form back, ready to hit this. A Dijon side that are probably being more attacking, more expansive, give them a little bit more space than the likes of Toulouse and Metz have in recent weeks. So this should be, for them and Lucien Favre's side, a chance to express themselves a little bit more and maybe grab a good win.
Yeah, I mean, Dijon will absolutely let them play. They'll play themselves, but they'll let Nice play their own sort of game of football. I mean, Dijon's games, the only thing you can guarantee is goals. They've got a very, very poor defence, the worst defence in the league, despite having played a game fewer than most of the other teams. Nice can't really keep a clean sheet either. 1 in 16 games. This game will have goals in it. But I think Adam's made the point there that Nice are a team with greater quality, and they should be able to win this game and to win it quite comfortably. But Nice have just had no consistency whatsoever this season, and to play well against Toulouse and lose, perhaps they'll play poorly and win in this one.
And talking about consistency, really, Adam, Dijon at home so far this season, they haven't lost at home since October against Paris Saint-Germain. They've won 6 of their last 7, drawing the other game at home, which is an excellent run for a side that do play expansive football, but they love playing at home, don't they?
Yeah, they are really good at home, and that game you mentioned against PSG as well, they were unlucky not to win that. That Benjamin volley, absolutely brilliant, and I think Meunier scored twice at the end, so they really could have got something there as well. So they're definitely a threat at home, and as you said, they're expansive, they attack. They've got a lot of sort of tricky, sort of waspish little players in midfield. Filo Tavares leads the line really, really well, and people play off him. When you look at their midfield and look at people like Slitty and Amalfitano when he's Kwan as well, Samaritano, Wesley Said, they're all very sort of skillful, very similar types of players. There's a lot of sort of fluidity in that midfield, and when they play that expansive football, when perhaps teams come to them and naturally away from home you kind of sit off, it helps Dijon, and they, as you said, they've been absolutely brilliant at home, and it kind of plays into their hands. So it should be a really interesting game tomorrow, because that's the way this is going to play out. That Dijon are going to attack, and Nice are going to perhaps be a little bit more conservative, because that's kind of the team they are, and they'll sort of look to hit on the counter and keep Balotelli and Alassane Player in the game, and hopefully nick a couple of goals and go home with 3 points. But it'll be. I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's an interesting tactical sort of a chess match between the two managers.
Yeah, and they all those exciting, quick Dijon players all bounce off of Julio Tavares that sort of holds it together in the middle there
Yes.
as a sort of linchpin as well. And great stat for Dijon as well as their last 5 games at home. They've scored at least more than once, and in 4 of those, they've scored 3. So they are really enjoying their home form at the moment. So it makes an interesting prediction, Adam. What are you going for?
2-2.
Sam?
3-2 Dijon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm going to go for 3-3. I think this might be a little bit of a tasty one. If you can catch it on Saturday, Dijon at home are a team certainly to watch. Moving on to Sunday's games now, and the early one is between Strasbourg and Troyes. The away side are in a bit of bother, really. It's a little bit unfortunate for them that the game was called off last weekend. They won't play that until the 20th against Dijon, who also missed out last week. But they have now sunk to 19th, Adam. They've been really poor form, really, this side of the season 2018. They have won 1 game against Lille, but big losses against teams like Angers and Toulouse. They lost to Lens in the Coupe as well this week as well. It's looking pretty poor. This run, they've got Strasbourg now, Metz, Dijon and Rennes in the next games in February. This is a really important moment for them to try and get back on the horse. They're staring down the barrel at the moment.
Yeah, they are. I think there are a couple of things to be said. First of all, dropping into the bottom 2 looks bad, but it's so close to teams, the bottom third, the bottom half of the table, that had they played Dijon last week and they'd even got a point, they wouldn't be there. So, or even got a win, they'd be 14th, 15th, and perhaps you wouldn't be so glum about them. But I think they have a number of issues in their side. First of all, goals. They've got sort of rotating between Adama Niane and Souk up front, who's on loan from Porto, and I think that they kind of wish that those 2 players were one, because Niane has a poor attitude sometimes, and perhaps is a bit better finisher than Souk. But Souk works really hard. Is much better interplay with players like Stefan Darbion and Brian Pelé and Sam Grandsir, but doesn't score that many goals. I know he's got a few in the league. He scored twice against Monaco. Both of those very fortunate, but I don't think he can be relied upon to score goals. And I think if you played Niane more consistently, he'd probably be a bit more reliable in front of goal and spread his goals out a little bit more and contribute more to points, rather than Souk, who kind of scores in little bursts occasionally and perhaps isn't the best focal point for the attack. Also in midfield, it's interesting how they're using Benjamin Nive this season, because yes, he's 41, so he's not going to be expected to play every game, but ability-wise, he's still brilliant. And in this league, given that Ligue and fullbacks don't really get bomb on too much, and it's a little bit slower than the Premier League, perhaps, then he's still okay at that sort of age, playing for a team like Troyes. And he's kind of dropped out of favour a little bit. He was injured for a while, and Koui's done really well on loan from Marseille in the same position. So I can understand why I haven't been using him as much. But he's been playing in the Cup, and he played against Lens in the week, and he played in the previous round as well when they played SC Still from the 8th tier. And it's like that's a really odd usage of him, because he's such a quality player. You feel like he should be focused on league games alone, because they need to stay in the division. And not if he doesn't start, then he should be given half an hour towards the end of tight games where he can really affect the game. It's down to him that even in this division, having scored the goal against Lorient in the playoff last season to get the team up. Sorry. So I'm surprised at Jean-Louis Gasset's usage of him there. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out going forward. Maybe his legs are just going, and he's realised that he can't. This will be his last season, perhaps, and he can't keep playing, that consistently. But then I don't understand the usage in the cup, because they're not going. I don't think that they fancy themselves to win the cup, and they're out now as well. So that's a bit confusing. But they need goals, and I don't know where they're going to come from. So I do fear for them a little bit now. But at least one caveat is that they haven't had a terrible season like they did before. It was a nightmare before, but at least it's been better than that. But yeah, they are staring down the barrel a bit. I agree.
And this pales in importance for both of them, really, because Strasbourg have been a little bit indifferent since the turn of the year. They got off to 2 defeats, beat Dijon, then lost to Lille and Bordeaux. So 1 win in 5 is not ideal, really, when there's such a dogfight in that middle table to all the way down to sort of 19th area. Sam, they've got some tough games coming up as well. They've got Paris Saint-Germain and Montpellier in the next couple, Monaco in the middle of March as well, pretty sooner upon the horizon. Do you feel like they need to start picking things up again and start picking up some points? Otherwise, they are another team that, if a couple of results go against them, really, that they can be facing the drop zone as themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the simple fact is the worst team in the division at the minute in terms of form. 3 points from the last 6 games is terrible, and no one else has done worse than that. You look at the table and you see them 14th. You think, well, it's not so bad. But realistically, the Ligue is so bottom heavy. There are so many teams in that dogfight that we've been talking about that it just doesn't take much for them to drop in. And those difficult games that you talk about that are coming up, PSG, Montpellier, Monaco, it's rough. And this is a game that they really need to be winning to give themselves some comfort, just to not be really in panic stations towards the end of the season, because they win this game, they leave Troyes a long way behind them, and you really have some breathing space. You lose this game, Troyes are only 3 points behind, and the drop zone, it seems awfully close, looms awfully large. This is a huge game for Strasbourg. We've talked again and again. We all kind of like the idea of Strasbourg staying up and becoming a sort of powerful club again, and really sort of embracing their history and all of that. But it's really on a knife edge. Lose this game, and they're really in trouble.
It feels like that for a lot of teams, doesn't it? Because of that sort of dogfight in there, that whenever they seem to face each other, a win is enormous, especially if you're the higher team, because it gives you that breathing space. And if you're below it and you get that win, you're clawing some of them back. I mean, Mets have been on a great run of sort of 4 wins in 6 or 7 games, and they're absolutely nowhere near these other teams, because someone wins each week and then someone loses, and no one ever really seems to run away. I mean, you start looking up that table, and maybe from sort of Caen downwards, you're still thinking that any of those could be involved in being automatically relegated, never mind being even just in the playoffs. So it's an important game for both sides. Troyes with a week's rest, but with a poor result in the Cup. Then Strasbourg with a good result in the Cup, but on a Thursday night, so they've had less rest in between that one. It's on a knife edge. I think it's going to be a draw. I think it'll probably be 1-1 between the two of them. Adam?
Yeah, I might even go 0-0.
Sam?
I'm gonna go for 1-0 sneaky, scrappy Strasbourg win.
Don't think it's going to be the most entertaining game, shall we possibly say? But both sides desperately need something out of that game, ready for a longer winter ahead, at least. Anyway, we finish with Sunday night's match, and if it matches up to any of the other Sunday night games we've had this season, we're in for a real treat. Unfortunately, it's not between any of the... Well, it involves one of the top 4, at least in Lyon, as they host Rennes. Adam, Lyon in the last couple of weeks, 3 big games in a row, really. They've had... they obviously had Paris Saint-Germain, and then they had Bordeaux, then they've had Monaco. Only won one of those, though, with that impressive win against PSG. It sort of fell apart since then. This feels like a game where they need to try and bounce back if they want to finish second in this league.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a game that if Lyon want to finish second, which of course they do, they have to be winning. At home to Rennes, who are sort of upper mid-table, decent and dangerous on their day. But it's the type of game that Lyon really, really should be winning if they want to finish second. It's weird how Lyon the season's kind of played out, in that they often do better against the bigger teams, and they've dropped silly points like against teams outside the top 6. That Bordeaux game being a really good example. Okay, it was Poyet's first game in charge, and there was a lot of other factors. They didn't play well at all. Bordeaux, without Gourvenec, were clearly fired up, and the game played out as it did, lost 3-1 and deserved to. But then they beat Monaco in the Cup. They should have really beaten Monaco in the League last week, and they beat PSG. So it's almost like their style kind of suits playing better teams, because there's a little bit more space. Those teams are going to come at them a little bit more, but they do struggle when teams come to them and they sit in. They're actually not great at home. They've got a better away record, I think. And they sit in. They struggle to break teams down, and it's how they go about getting the best out of their creative players to break those lesser teams down. And this may be a good case in point, because Rennes might end up doing that, and Rennes also very dangerous on the counter-attack because they've got so much pace in Ismail Assar and players like that. So it's a really dangerous one for Lyon, and it honestly wouldn't surprise me to say again didn't pick up 3 points. It's the classic game for Lyon this season where they've really struggled. So I think they need to really work on breaking sides down. For me, it's prioritising where they play Hossam Aouar. I don't think he's best on the left-hand side. I think he's much better in midfield, and not necessarily number 10, but maybe the furthest forward of a midfield 3. So for me, that's what I would focus on. But there's obviously a lot of ways. They've got lots of creative players, but getting them to break this Rennes team down would be Genesio's big problem.
Yeah, it's about finding the right mix, really, Sam, for Lyon at the moment. I mean, one of the areas of contention, and Adams briefly mentioned it, really, is the wide areas. I mean, Aouar's played on the left at times. Cornet was in the game against Bordeaux, was pretty anonymous. Bertrand Traoré returned against Monaco. He scored, but didn't do much else. Depay, again, scored that great goal against Paris Saint-Germain, but was ineffectual in any other games they've really had. It's meant the likes of Fekir and Diaz haven't really been involved as much. Is it getting that combination of the two out wide players at least the most important for Genesio now, and in terms of making Lyon tick a little bit more smoothly?
Yeah, I think when they were in great form, they were winning so many games and they were scoring and they were playing really well. It was that they got that exactly right, and a little bit of that was down to injuries and things forcing Genesio's hand, and he sort of had to pick the team that he had. Now Aouar's emergence and return to fitness of some of his other players makes it a lot more complicated, and this is when Genesio really has to sort of earn his money. He has to make the right decisions and get this group of players. I mean, he's got it's an enviable problem to have so many excellent attacking players and just have to work out how to fit them together in the right way. But that's what he needs to do, because it can look very top heavy, very sort of goal scorer heavy and finisher heavy, without the people to necessarily build the platform for those guys to play on sometimes. And so if he doesn't get that equation right, they look very lost, they look very confused. I think against Bordeaux, it was definitely not the right combination. And once they went behind, they seemed to panic, and there was too many people trying to do their own thing and not enough of them sort of playing the team game, really getting away from what had served Lyon so well. And so, yeah, really just getting this balance exactly right, and perhaps resting some of these big names. You know, you don't want to drop someone like Aouar, but perhaps you do. I mean, obviously you don't drop Aouar, but perhaps you drop one or two of these bigger names just to get it quite right, because otherwise, you know, it could be 3 defeats in a row.
And that was the strange thing about the Monaco game, I thought, with obviously Luka Toussaint out of this one. They decided to go for Ndombele and Aouar in the middle, and both are excellent footballers and work really well in that role. But having those two behind Traoré, Depay, Fekir, Diaz was just a recipe for disaster. I mean, if Monaco had kept 11 men, and I thought this during the game, really, that it was one lucky goal for Diaz, goalkeeping mistake, a great run by Traoré for the second. But as soon as Keita Balde scored, it felt like, and obviously Falcao scored the equaliser, it felt like that Monaco were building momentum before the Balde red card. It felt like Monaco at that point were finding the gaps behind the amount of attacking players or attacking-minded players that they had on the field, and they maybe need to work better, even if it means playing Jordan Ferry, who can play a little bit more defensively or something like that, or even playing someone like Diakabe as an extra defender, play with a back three. Use one of them almost as a pseudo defensive midfielder. They just needed a bit more security, and that's could be a worry. Adam, and you briefly mentioned it about playing someone like Rennes, who have players that like to get in behind, like Ismail Assar, who seems to be fouled every time he's touching the ball at the moment, really, and that's exacerbated by Kylian Mbappe's extension of his suspension as well, and the like. And then you look at Mawassa, if he's on the field, or Unu who does that regularly, and Diafra likes playing on the edge of the defence as well. They've got players to trouble them, and if Lyon aren't at the top of the game, although Rennes have been indifferent recently, even a couple of poor results, they've got the players to trouble them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the type of opponent that Lyon won't like to play, and the pace they do have will be a real worry. Now they've got Diafra in the side as well. It really adds a bit more of a focal point to the attack with Kazri playing up there. He did very well, to be fair to him. but it's not his natural position. And at Bordeaux, he was brilliant behind the striker. So if they can just sort of, it might not be great for Johan Gorka, who's been in and out of the team because he's got no legs left. He's super injured. But if they can drop Kazri into that position and have him playing off Diafra Sakho, that might be a really good sort of focal point for that attack with Sarr on one side, and then players like Unu, as you mentioned, Benjamin Borogo in midfield as well. They've got some really exciting players, and I think perhaps maybe next season is the season for them when Lamucci's really got his feet under the table and he's really put his stamp on the team from Gorka before. That might be where to really worry about Rennes, but I think this is a slippy one for Lyon, and they've got the attacking players to really hurt Genesio's team.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, really, about Rennes at the moment, at least. Anyway, they performed admirably in the cup against Paris Saint-Germain. They had a couple of okay wins against Lille and Angers in the league, but then lost to Dijon, who were excellent at home. They lost to Guingamp last weekend as well. They're really a sort of Jekyll and Hyde side. You can't really decide exactly what Lemouche's team is going to do week in, week out. He seems to play a different formation, sometimes plays different players as well. They're still, again, and it seems like perpetually for Rennes, a team in flux, Sam.
Yeah, I think Adam really nailed it when he said they sort of play up to the level of their opponent. When they play a good team that wants to sort of play football against them, that lets Rennes sort of naturally fit into the reactive role. And with the exciting players they have, the quick players they have, being able to play on the break, being able to sort of just worry about playing football, not worry about sort of having to break down a deep set opponent, that suits them a lot better. And that's, I think, probably why you see more out of them when they play against the better sides, because, a side like PSG are never going to sit back. They're going to come at Rennes, which allows Rennes then the space to play into. The reason we see more out of a guy like Sarr when they play against PSG, he has room to run, unless Mbappe is anywhere near him. But, that's the reason why those games are much more attractive. And that's why this game, where Lyon will have to come at them, Lyon need to win this game, should really suit Rennes again. This should be a game for Rennes to show their quality as much as Lyon.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. This has the potential with the players on there to be another really exciting Sunday night game. And I'll start with you in the predictions, Adam. What are you thinking of this one?
I think it's going to be exciting. 3-2 Lyon.
Sam?
I'm going to go one level higher of Bedlam, and I'm going to say 4-3 Lyon.
Yes.
I'm going to tone it down a little bit and go for a 2-1 win, but I am hoping that we hear some of the craziest scorelines. Maybe that Sunday night fever might catch the teams again. We really, really hope so. That's all for this week. My thanks to Adam, Sam, and all of you listening at home. Join us for the main show again on Monday, but for now, enjoy your weekend of football.